Now, most homage watches that I buy are very heavily inspired by other watches. You can see that they are definitely taking styling cues from other watches to the point of possibly sort of being a replica of the watch, but not really, because often, especially the ones that I choose, have differences. Sometimes they have differences in size, sometimes they have difference in sort of other sort of factors or parts of it. Sometimes there's a blending of a couple of watches. But the watch that I'm going to show you today, I can't really say that about it. I can say that it is almost a one-for-one copy, except for, of course, the brand name is changed. So it's not a fake watch, but it is certainly a very, very similar watch to the one that it is homaging. And on this particular occasion, I'm actually completely okay with that. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. And today, I'm talking about a watch that is very much looking like a Citizen. Now, normally I don't talk about the watch that is actually homaging. I'm trying to avoid any of those issues that are coming up online in YouTube when you start talking about a watch. And I want to make very clear that the watch that I'm showing you today is not a Citizen. Note, this is a watch from Aliexpress. It is a watch from a brand called Humpback, but it is a watch that looks almost entirely exactly like a Citizen. Normally, when I do buy homages, I tend to look for ones that, firstly, are affordable, secondly, are good, but third, aren't exact replicas. You know, I'm not looking to buy a watch that is an exact replica. I'm looking for watches that I like. And if they're heavily looking like another watch, that doesn't bother me. In this case, however, it doesn't bother me at all that it is almost an exact replica, except for the brand name. And that is because the Citizen watch, this watch right here, this watch is way too expensive. It's a watch that looks really cool, but for a very simple sort of a digital watch, for a very sort of a cheap sort of feeling watch, because I know that this is a fairly cheap, affordable feeling watch, it is way too expensive. Because if you want to buy this Citizen watch, it's over 295 Australian dollars. And that's way too much money, and there's no way I would ever spend that amount of money on this type of watch, no matter how cool it looks. I don't have the budget for that for this style of watch. But this Humpback, this watch that looks very, very similar, is only 50 Australian dollars. Now, I bought this one on Aliexpress, and I'm going to leave an affiliate link to this watch if you're interested in this one after watching this video. For now, let's flip the camera over and let me show you my Humpback, the one that looks very, very similar to this Citizen. So here we have a rather interesting watch at a reasonable price. Now, this is what it comes on, this little card, and it is a Humpback. Now, it does have a whale there, so I keep saying Humpback, but it's not, it's a Humpback. But Humpback or Humpbuck, it doesn't really matter, because for me, it's a Star Wars watch, and because it does look a lot like that other watch that it is homaging, I do want to point this out, that it does not say Citizen there, it says Humpbuck. But besides that, from what I can see in pictures, it looks virtually the same. What I can tell though is that the functionality of it is very similar, but it's not the same module. I thought for a while there that the module actually might be the same because it is so similar, but I've compared it now on videos of the original watch and the buttons work slightly differently, so it definitely is not the same module as in that Citizen. And I've actually taken the back off this one to see what sort of module it is, and I'll put a photo of that module now. Now, I'm not very good at picking modules, so I'm not sure what that is, but that's what it looks like. But when you actually look at this watch, it's really nice. It looks really cool. It's exactly what I was hoping to get from this watch. The quality of it is better than I expected as well. And it definitely has that sort of visual look that you're sort of looking for if you're buying this sort of watch. The back is fairly simple. It's got the Humpbuck and the whale there, stainless steel back, water resistance. Now, they say the model number is CK004, and they say it has 30 meters of water resistance. Now, looking at that dial, it's actually really well made. I really like the sub-dials there. They look very cool. It has a temperature gauge built into the watch as well, just like the original, so it's rather interesting. Now, I haven't mastered all the functionality of this one. I haven't figured out how everything works, but let me show you a few things about it. If we concentrate in on that left-hand bottom dial there, you can see which features we have. And as we flick through the modes, we can see we have a time mode, which then gives you the temperature at the bottom, as well as the day and the date. The next one there is an alarm mode. I think there's a couple of alarms on this one. We then have a dual time feature, I believe, and then a stopwatch feature. Now, back down to the time, and you can see that we've also got a running seconds up here. There are some other features that we can move things around, and I believe we can change that to a second time zone as well. Haven't quite figured that one out. What surprises me though, as part of this watch, is how good the light is. Now looking at this and turning that backlight on, you can see it's actually really good. It's just backlit from the side there, but it lights up all the panels there that you're going to need to tell the time really well. Now, I'm not sure how it's coming across on screen, but this watch is not particularly big. However, it has an interesting wrist presence. So let's talk about dimensions. Being a square shape, it's a little bit different. So the case is 33.2 millimeters. The width of the watch is 10.5 millimeters. Now, the lug to lug, it's a little bit different because of how this sort of a strap goes into there. But if we actually just measure the case itself, it's 37.2 millimeters. Lug width really is not applicable for this particular size, and it is 71 grams on this supplied strap. And that strap is actually rather good. It surprises me a little bit, and it does not nip my hairs. Stainless steel, it is a rolled construction, but you can see underneath how they put it together, it doesn't tend to grab my sort of wrist hairs, and I do have quite a few wrist hairs. But there is a little bit of a problem with it, and that's got to do with how it sits. As you can see, it's sitting a little bit strangely, and that is probably one of the only negatives of this watch that I've actually found, because that sort of strap coming off the case doesn't seem to sort of sit particularly well. Now, this is stainless steel, however the case is not. It is obviously some sort of plastic or resin with a sort of chrome look outside. The buttons are black, and they're actually quite hard, but they're quite easy to push on. It doesn't really feel like they're pushing in, it just feels like you're sort of tapping on it, but you have to give it a bit of a push to move them through, but it seems to work quite well. The clasp is actually good. It's got a safety feature over there. On the other side, we have a hook sort of style there, which then hooks onto that. And it works really well, and it feels very secure on wrist as well. Now, I've actually been wearing this one a little bit loose on wrist, purely because of how that strap integrates into the case. And when I wear it a little bit low, it looks perfectly fine and fits onto wrist okay. It's not okay, however, when I move it up, because you can see it kind of sticks out a little bit and sticks out a little bit, as you can see there, and that's a little bit of a problem with it. And because it is one of those integrated straps or integrated bracelets, it's probably not something that you can really swap out without it looking a little bit strange. Which leads me into what do I like about it, what don't I like about it, and what would I change. And the thing that I really like about it is the looks. It does have some interesting functionality that I'm sure if I spent a lot more time with, I'd get to know better, but it's the looks that I bought this watch for. And the price of it, it's a price of watch that I can absolutely afford versus the original watch. However, there's a few issues with it, mostly to do with this bracelet and how it sits. Now, on that note, looking underneath and how it sits with this piece of steel, I think there might be some modifications that could be done that may make it easier to wear on wrist, but I'm not looking to chop this watch up just yet. So what would I change about it? Well, that is really the only thing I would change. But what I want to talk more about now is that price, because I think that's a big point of selling of this watch, or a big reason why you might buy this one. And to do that, I want to flip the camera back to me and talk about that price. So this watch cost me $50 Australian on Aliexpress, and it's quite an interesting price, because if I take this as a standalone watch by itself, not thinking about the watch that it is homaging, I would probably think it's actually probably a little bit expensive. It's a sort of a cheaper sort of feeling digital watch. However, when I compare it against the watch that it is homaging, that Citizen, it is actually really affordable. So in that context, initially, before I even had it in hand, I thought, yeah, $50 Australian, that's not a bad price. When I then actually had it in hand, it actually felt better than I expected, or at least it looked better than I expected. Yes, it still feels like one of those sort of cheaper Casio watches with those sort of metal straps, but it was actually not bad. I actually didn't mind it, especially that sort of price range. It did make me think, thankfully, that I did not ever spend more money on this style of watch, but I thought it was okay. And if you want to buy something else in this sort of price range, well, I'd definitely be thinking Casio, because it would look sort of similar, not have the Star Wars sort of look to it, but sort of have that same sort of styling to it. And I think for that same sort of money, Casio is probably the other option. And guys, if you like this video, maybe you'll check these two out next.